Hey guys, tonight we're trudging through the dim, dusty corridors of ancient Rome, not with a sword, not with a toga, but with 12 rattling iron keys and a job that nobody respects. You're the humble ostiarius, or doorkeeper, stationed at the threshold of a crowded insula, basically a Roman apartment block with fewer safety codes and more mysterious smells. Your job is simple. Keep the peace, hold the keys, and try not to let too many people climb the stairs to stab each other. You carry 12 keys, not because you're important, but because everything is locked. The grain closet, the wine cupboard, the upstairs balcony. Because of that one time with the acrobat, each key is hand-cut, iron-forged, and labeled only by feel. One has a chipped tooth, another smells faintly like fish sauce, and one opens a room that no one's entered since Caligula was a toddler. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit cross-legged on your woven mat, listening to the city wake up. A donkey brays in the distance. Somewhere, someone's already yelling. You grope under your bedding, feeling for the cold weight of the ring that binds all 12 keys, 12 teeth of the building's memory. You've named them. Of course, it helps. There's biter for the front gate, stumbler for the crooked pantry, squealer for the noisy storeroom, and mercy because that one never turns on the first try. You don't live in the building. Not exactly. You exist inside its breath. Between its sighs, your cot is pressed against the wall near the entrance, a liminal zone between other people's homes and their arguments. You're the first person anyone sees when they arrive late, and the last person blamed when something goes missing. Above you, the ceiling creaks under someone's footsteps. Probably Livia. She's the one who dumps stale porridge water out the window every morning with a polite move. You scratch your ankle. There's a persistent rash that doctors blame on bad air. You think it's the rats, or the mold, or the fact that your cot touches the same wall that leaks whenever it rains. But this is what you do. This is who you are. You're the man who knows when the upstairs philosopher leaves for his late-night debates. You hear him whisper truth before he walks out, like it's a password. You know that the woman in 2C cries every third night, then rearranges her clay figurines by candlelight. And you know that someone on the top floor has been stealing lamp oil and blaming it on divine intervention. Historically, Roman doorkeepers weren't always slaves. Sometimes they were freedmen. Sometimes they were eunuchs. Sometimes they were just poor guys like you who didn't duck fast enough when the landlord asked for volunteers. You weren't born with keys in your hand, but you've grown calluses where the iron rubs. You yawn. Not out of boredom, there's never really time for that, but from the sheer weight of knowing you'll have to unlock the garbage storeroom again today. Someone keeps throwing bones in there without a bucket. You're not naming names, but you've seen that senator's nephew do it twice. He calls it feeding the ghosts. A side fact that few remember, ancient Roman doors didn't swing on hinges like ours do. They pivoted on pins set into stone thresholds and lintels, which means when something gets jammed, it really gets jammed. You've used your sandal as a wedge more times than you can count. It now has the shape of the door etched into it permanently. You're oddly proud of that. You press your ear against the gate. You can hear the heartbeat of the city, vendors wheeling carts, water being sloshed into troughs, a boy shouting something about oysters. You open the latch slowly. The outer street smells like vinegar and rosemary this morning. Not bad, all things considered. As you stretch, your arms crack. Pop, sigh. You glance at the wax tablet pinned to the post near your cot. It's your shift log. 2A complained about mice. Check. 3B left her sandals on the stairwell. Check. Someone used red paint to write, "Saturn eats rent money" on the back wall. Check, check, and still unresolved. Historians still argue whether Roman doorkeepers had formal training or just picked it up as they went. Some say there were actual handbooks passed around, filled with best practices and curse-breaking tips. Others insist it was oral tradition passed down like gossip, only slightly more useful. You prefer your version, learn fast or get blamed for everything. You lean against the doorway now, clutching the key ring like it's a medal of honor. or at least a decent excuse to avoid climbing 4 floors with a leaky jug of fish sauce. As the street fills with color and chaos, your 12 keys clink softly like wind chimes strung from exhaustion and routine. And just as you consider closing your eyes for another precious minute, someone pounds on the gate. You sigh. It begins. You unlock the gate with Biter, whose iron teeth bite back every 3rd morning. The hinge shrieks like it's auditioning for a tragedy, and before the door even swings fully open, you're greeted by a jug of goat's milk shoved in your face and a very offended vendor accusing you of theft again. No, I'm not Tusi. You mumble for the 6th time this week. Yes, I'm sure. You point up. She's got red tiles on her balcony. I sleep next to a mop. The vendor glares like it's your fault people in this building can't read apartment numbers. You shut the gate behind him and make a mental note to add labeled door frames to the growing list of problems you're not paid enough to solve. Morning in a Roman insula is something between a military drill and a poorly rehearsed play. Doors slam, shutters creak, buckets clatter, someone spills lentil stew 3 floors up. It lands in the gutter, misses you by an inch. Blessings be, your day starts before the sun. Not because you're a morning person, but because your job is the morning. You're the first to check the front steps for broken amphorae, the first to light the oil lamp that barely holds a flame in the hallway, the first to find out that someone again has been peeing in the stairwell. You light your torch with a sigh, watching shadows wobble across the cracked walls. The smell of damp plaster and vinegar floats up from the cellar. You hear the groan of the wooden beam as 3A opens her door too hard again. She does this every morning, like she's trying to wrestle history itself. You climb the stairs slowly. Each step is a trap. Some creak, some wobble, one is just gone. You have to remember that every time. Miss the ghost step and you're on your back. Again, halfway up, you find an empty chamber pot tucked behind a plant. Thoughtful. You've long since stopped asking who leaves them. People don't answer honestly before breakfast. You slide it to the side with your foot. Add that to the list. You knock on 2B to remind them the drain tax is due. You do this every 2nd day of the month. They never answer. You do it anyway, because routine is what keeps you from yelling into clay. Fact time. The average Roman insula could rise up to 6 stories high, but the higher up you lived, the cheaper the rent. Rich folk stayed close to the ground floor near the exits and away from gravity. The poor, they scrambled skyward. And the doorkeeper, you live in the hallway, stuck between floors, like a comma in someone else's sentence. You knock on 3C to warn them the baker's coming. They yell back that the baker is a liar and owes them flatbread from last week. You smile. You don't even ask why. You just move on. At the landing between 3 and 4, you see it, a rat. Bold, majestic, possibly named. It stares at you as if daring you to act. You raise your sandal. It sprints into the wall, disappearing through a hole that definitely wasn't there last week. You stare at it for a second too long. One day, you're going to follow that rat and end up in Narnia. At the roof level, there's light, real light. You take a second to let it hit your face. You pretend, just briefly, that you're not carrying the weight of 12 keys, 5 complaints, and a strange feeling that someone's been stealing lamp oil again. You sniff. Yep, oil's gone. You head back down, muttering under your breath about roof access and why God's put sunshine so far away from your mat. The torch sputters. The oil is low. You wonder if you could burn an old sandal. You decide against it. Barefoot doorkeepers don't get tipped. As you descend, someone yells for you. It's the kid from 1. He's lost his wax tablet. Again, you remind him it's under the laundry bench. He insists it's not. You walk him over, lift the bench, and there it is, covered in chicken feathers. Don't ask, he mutters. I never do. You say. You lean against the main wall near your cot and scribble a note on your own tablet. Find feathers. Ask fewer questions. Historians still argue whether Roman doorkeepers had any authority or were simply glorified witnesses to domestic chaos. Some records suggest they could fine tenants for infractions. Others imply they were little more than punching bags for late-night drunks and angry bakers. You feel somewhere in between, more like a sponge absorbing drama, complaints, and an unreasonable amount of soup. Back by the gate, someone else is knocking. You groan before turning. It's the chamber pot collector. He's early, again, and wants to borrow Stumbler to unlock the cellar. You hand it over, muttering a quiet prayer that he doesn't drop it into something wet and unspeakable, the day has just begun. You've already negotiated 4 arguments, returned 2 lost items, and stepped in something suspicious, all before breakfast. And now you realize no one's fed the alley cat. You dig through a jar of old fish bones near the wall. You whistle once, sharply. A blur of orange fur and attitude slides out from behind the cistern. He meows like you've insulted his lineage. You toss him the bones anyway. He looks offended but eats them. As he crunches, you sit back against the stone wall, keys heavy in your lap, and take one deep breath. Then someone starts yelling upstairs about wet laundry. Again, you take the stairs 2 at a time, not because you're in a hurry, but because if you wait too long, someone else will join the argument and it'll become a council meeting. And the last time that happened, someone suggested sacrificing a chicken to settle the dispute. You still have feathers under your cot. When you reach the 2nd floor, the yelling is already in full swing. It's the sisters from 2A, shouting at the merchant in 2C because his laundry dripped vinegar on their window herbs. Again, you know how this ends, with passive-aggressive comments, someone moving a plant 2 inches to the left, and a strongly worded note in charcoal on the stairwell wall. You lean on the railing, arms crossed. No one notices. You clear your throat. Still nothing. You finally step between them, raise a hand, and say, "If we're sacrificing anything today, it's going to be my lunch break." Silence. A moment later, the older sister snorts. The merchant mutters something about olive-brained women, and just like that, the tension deflates. You suggest they take their grievances to the building's official complaint tablet stored on a shelf you made from a broken crate and an old tile. Of course, no one ever actually writes anything on it, but threatening to write something on it is half the point. You return to your post by the gate, still holding all 12 keys. That's when you hear a whisper. Not a romantic one, not even a secret, just a soft hiss from the shadows behind a pillar. You glance sideways. It's Tiberius from 1B. The man speaks only in whispers, claims he used to guard an emperor's horse, and insists he has political knowledge too dangerous for daylight. You nod respectfully. He hands you a folded scrap of parchment and disappears into his room. The parchment reads, "The philosopher in 4A steals olives at night." You sigh, add it to the list. And this is where things get trickier because being a doorkeeper isn't just about locks. It's about people. You have to remember who's sleeping with whom, who's avoiding whom, and who's lying about their rent payment to whom. You've seen 2 brothers fake a fistfight to distract the landlord while their 3rd sibling snuck a pig upstairs. You've also seen that pig come back down disguised in a toga. You said nothing, a mainstream fact most folks overlook. Many Roman apartment buildings didn't have internal plumbing or personal kitchens. That meant tenants spent their days in shared spaces, stairwells, courtyards, communal hearths. And those spaces, they're yours to manage. You remember when 3D tried storing a mattress in the stairwell to air it out? You told him to move it. He ignored you. A day later, it caught fire from a stray oil lamp. You didn't say "I told you so." You just added "replace stair paint" to the never-ending tablet of regrets. Downstairs, someone's knocking at the side door. That means it's probably Sextus, the fishmonger, who delivers to 2B, and always wants to cut through the building instead of going around. You open the door a crack. "Yep, fish." And mood. He grunts. "I forgot the code." You raise an eyebrow. There is no code. But you appreciate the effort. You let him through and wave him off with a warning. "Drip once, and I revoke hallway privileges." He drips anyway. Of course, you follow his trail of sad sardine water down the corridor, muttering as you go. You pass Livia from 4C, who smiles sweetly, then immediately says, "Someone's been sneaking into the broom closet at night." You nod. You know, you've been listening. You just haven't decided whether to care. You finally reach your corner, the spot near the cistern where you store everything too weird to keep inside. Broken locks, a chipped statue of Bacchus, and a clay tablet etched with the words, "The rain god owes me rent." You didn't write it, you just found it one morning, still damp. Historians still argue whether Roman buildings had designated concierges or if the doorkeeper was expected to juggle every task from security to moral arbitration. Some inscriptions suggest the doorkeeper had a partner. You dream about this imaginary person often. They usually bring pastries. Back by the front gate, you hear a soft tap-tappa, not a knock, a suggestion of one. You crack the gate open. It's Lucilla, the widow from 1 A. She stands there with a bundle of figs and the look of someone about to lie creatively. She asks if her second cousin's second son might sleep on the roof tonight, just for one night, just to soak in the stars. You ask how many nights he's already been there. 7. She admits, but he's very quiet. You smile. You've known the kid was up there. He's the one singing sea shanties at midnight. You tell her it's fine, but warn her that any more cousins and you'll start charging constellation fees. She laughs, hands you a fig, and walks off. You sit back and bite into the fig slowly, sweet, soft, a little overripe, like everything else in this building. Your keys jingle as you shift. Each one represents a locked door. Each door represents a secret, or a regret, or a moldy cheese wheel someone forgot about. You don't just hold the keys, you hold the narrative. And sometimes, just sometimes, you think that's worth more than a coin. You start the morning's most sacred ritual, writing a passive-aggressive clay note. It's for the tenant in 3B. He keeps leaving the main gate slightly ajar, just enough for stray cats, shady traders, and the occasional philosophical drunk to wander in. You tried speaking to him in person once. He nodded solemnly, and then did it again the next day. So now, you take your stylus, press it into the clay slab on your lap, and write, "The gate is not a suggestion." You sign it with a flourish, just a symbol of a sandal. Really, but everyone knows it means you. You slap the note onto the post near the entryway. Beside 3 other drying warnings, no trading. Leeches in the hallway. Please announce your god before praying in the stairwell. The broom closet is not a temple. The last one caused quite a stir. Downstairs, someone sneezes loudly enough to rattle your keys. You mutter a blessing out of habit, not because you're pious, but because if you don't say something, they'll come find you later and ask if you cursed them by omission. This is your life, the human cork in a bottle full of very loud, slightly fermented people. There's a knock, but not at the front gate. No, this one is from inside the building. Specifically, from 2E's door. You squint. That door doesn't have a handle. You climb the stairs. Curious, at 2E, you find the door propped open with a bust of Cicero and a clay tablet sitting in the corridor with the words, "Please remind tenant not to whistle after dark. It disturbs the lairs." The lairs are household spirits. Sure, but also notoriously chill. You think the real issue is that the whistler is off-key. Still, you knock and deliver the message. The tenant nods solemnly, then immediately starts whistling again. You close the door for them, gently, and walk away before your eye starts twitching. You check your wax log. Several entries need updating. 4C's boy lost his sandal again. 1B claims someone whispered his name through the walls. 3D wants to host a poetry reading in the stairwell again. You reach into your pouch and pull out the stylus. It's worn smooth. It's dulled by years of complaints and sarcasm. You scrape a new note into the wax. Need new stylus. Possibly enchanted. Refuses to write rude words. You laugh quietly to yourself. You haven't written anything truly rude in months, mostly out of fear that the building will whisper back. Mainstream fact. Roman doorkeepers often kept track of tenants using wax tablets, or even small wooden slates. Some, in fancier domus homes, had marble markers to show who was in residence. But in the insula, it's wax, spit, and stubbornness. You press your ear to 3A's door. She's arguing with herself again. At least, you hope she's alone. You hear, "And that's why I will never share my Giram again." But he gave you 3 peaches. Peaches don't count as reparations. You knock gently. No answer, just more shouting. You sigh and leave a simple note at her door. Peach exchange unresolved. Garum at risk. As you head back down, you spot a delivery tablet tucked into the hallway shelf. Someone has requested a bundle of rushes, a new curtain rod, and oddly, a live frog. You pretend you didn't see that last one. You sit beside your cot, checking for new leaks in the ceiling. Only one today. A good sign. You tilt your wax board toward the light to read the earlier entries, squinting as the old notes catch the sun. That's when you spot something new. Someone scribbled a response to your clay note about the gate. It reads, "I leave it open so the wind can visit." 3B. You rub your temples. Of course, the wind. You add a follow-up note. "The wind doesn't pay rent. That should settle it." Suddenly, a scream echoes from upstairs. Not panic, surprise. You leap up, keys jangling, feet pounding. By the time you reach the 4th floor, you find the young boy from 4B staring into a storage room. He points. Inside, nothing. Just a spilled jar of olives and a broom that somehow fell perfectly vertical, standing like it's been placed there by an offended spirit. The boy swears it moved on its own. You nod slowly and whisper, "Some brooms have aspirations." He doesn't laugh. He just runs back to his room. Historians still argue whether Roman buildings were home to practical jokes or minor hauntings, evidence of household magic rituals, little charms left in corners, salt trails. Painted eyes suggests Romans were deeply suspicious of empty rooms and vertical cleaning tools. You reset the broom. Close the storage door. Make a mental note. No more olives in that room, ever. As you descend the stairs, you feel the keys thump against your thigh with each step. You imagine their voices, not whispers, just occasional sighs of judgment. Back at the bottom, you see someone has left a pomegranate on your cot. No note, no explanation. You stare at it. You know 3 tenants who believe pomegranates ward off bad dreams. 2 who think they cause them. 1 who just uses them to test for mold. You pick it up gently. Sniff. Seems fine. You place it on your shelf beside the sandal fragment and the tile that may or may not have belonged to a minor deity of mildew. And you sit, and you breathe, and you prepare for whatever nonsense comes next. You blink up at the oil lamp. It's flickering again. You trimmed the wick yesterday, but it keeps guttering like it knows secrets you don't. You reach for your pouch. Inside, you find your spare wick, a pinch of leftover olive oil, and a crumbly piece of flatbread you forgot was there. You pocket the bread, never know when you'll need to bribe a child or distract a pigeon, and start climbing the stairs again. The lamp on the 2nd floor is completely out. A mouse darts across your sandal as you approach, as if reminding you who really runs this place. You nod respectfully. You've tried fighting them once. It ended in shame and mild injury. As you crouch to refill the lamp, you hear it. The sound of bread being argued over, loudly. You don't even need to turn around to know what this is. Yep, it's the bread boy. And he's at it again. Apartment 3B, I have your loaf. A pause. Apartment 3B doesn't exist. It goes from 3A to 3C. You're in the wrong building again. Another pause. Then, where is 3B hiding? You take a long, slow breath. You've had this conversation before. You head up the stairs, keys jangling. The bread boy is standing outside 3C, holding a very flattened loaf like it's a weapon. The woman in 3C, long-suffering and permanently barefoot, is glaring at him like she's deciding whether or not to call down the gods. You place a hand on the boy's shoulder. It's the next building. You whisper, as gently as one can with gritted teeth, like it was yesterday and the day before. He narrows his eyes. Then, who keeps signing for the bread? You blink. What? He points to a wax tablet. Sure enough, there's a crude signature, definitely not one of your tenants. And yet the bread disappears every morning. You stare down the hallway. Suddenly, you suspect you may have a hallway bread thief. You return to your post and jot a new entry on the wax slab. Investigate rogue bread snatcher, possibly feral, possibly literate. You make yourself a little more comfortable near the storage closet. That's where the trail of flour ends. A suspicious location, since it's right beside the shrine apartment. Apartment 2D is unique. The tenant believes in every god. Every single one. Her room is an altar maze of incense, dried herbs, statues, feathers, ribbons, coins, scrolls, and one extremely nervous tortoise. She calls you key of the threshold. You think it's a compliment. Today, she greets you with 3 hand gestures, 2 bows, and a question. Has Mercury said anything about my offerings? You shake your head. Mercury usually just takes the figs and runs. She nods. Serious. That's fair. She invites you inside to help her move a statue of Minerva that's facing the wrong direction. The statue is nearly your height and weighs as much as a guilty conscience. You heave, twist, and reposition it, only for her to tilt her head and murmur, maybe 3 degrees more. You bite your tongue. As you wrestle the statue into place, she hands you a small clay pendant. For protection, she says. From bureaucracy. You clutch it like it's gold. You'll need it. Rent notices go out tomorrow. Mainstream fact. Roman religion was a vibrant blend of gods, cults, superstitions, and household rituals. Most people worshipped a mixture of state deities and private spirits. Laris, Penates, Genii. It was like having roommates, some divine, some imaginary, all needy. You exit her room and blink the incense out of your eyes. You smell like rosemary and guilt. Back at your post, you lean against the wall, trying to decide whether the tortoise moved or whether it's just your imagination again. You barely sit before the next disaster strikes. Splash. You glance up. A bucket of suspiciously gray water just missed the hallway. You run up, not fast, not angry, just resolved. The sisters in 2A again. They're arguing about how to clean the floor. One wants vinegar. The other insists wine is more ceremonial. You point to the bucket, whatever that was. You say, it almost became an omen. They blink, then apologize, then go right back to arguing. You leave them to it. Historians still argue whether tenants in Roman insulae had any obligations to their building beyond paying rent and not dying dramatically. The answer seems to be sometimes when things broke, they blamed the landlord. When the landlord was missing, they blamed each other. And when everyone was tired, they blamed the doorkeeper. You glance at your wax tablet. It's full again. You flip it over and start a new page. You scribble, oil lamp replaced, bread boy confused, shrine stable, tortoise observed, sisters still impossible. Just then, a new problem appears, a stranger at the gate. You don't recognize him. Cloak too clean, shoes too expensive, hair too symmetrical. You squint. He claims to be a friend of the senator's nephew, wants to wait inside where it's cooler, offers you half a denarius. You fold your arms. The senator's nephew once fed his own sandal to a goose and blamed it on Neptune. You'll understand if I don't rush to open doors on his behalf. The stranger hesitates, smiles, then leaves. You mark him down in your log. Stranger, slick, possibly actor, definitely suspicious. You pat your keyring gently. The keys never judge you. They just clink. The hallway smells like oil and old bread. You take a bite of the crumb from your pouch. It's stale. You chew anyway. And somewhere, deep in the building, you hear it again. The sound of whistling, terribly, hauntingly off-key. And you sigh, because you know what that means. Time to write another note. You take your stylus, dip it in frustration, and carve a new message into the soft clay. Whistling still a crime after sundown, gods included. You sign it with your sandal symbol, pressed it to dry, and hang it from the hallway. Nail next to the warning about the vinegar fights and the one about no unaccompanied turtles on the roof after dark. Yes, that's a real rule. Yes, you had to enforce it. Then you take a deep breath and head for apartment 2D. Not for more statue lifting. No, today, you've been summoned by the gods. Specifically, the too many gods living in that one room. You knock gently and step inside. Immediately, smoke, incense, dried herbs, a dash of burnt honey. The room is dim and crowded. Dozens no. Scores of tiny statues peer at you from every shelf, every crevice, every ledge. There's Jupiter holding a lightning bolt beside a figurine of Isis next to a tiny Mercury with a broken sandal. A mini temple made of popsicle sticks, anachronistic. Sure, but somehow still here. A clay eye, painted with gold. And in the corner, a plush goat with one button eye and a name tag. Felix. You don't ask. She greets you wearing 3 shawls, 7 bangles, and a necklace made entirely of chicken bones. You try to focus. I need your help, she says solemnly, to rearrange the shrine. Again, Mercury and Apollo are fighting. You blink. The statues. No, the energies. You nod like this is normal. You squeeze between a basin of herbs and a low table with a half-sculpted goddess you don't recognize. She explains that Mercury has been facing the bathroom too long, and Apollo refuses to share sunlight. You consider suggesting a divine mediation service, then realize you are the divine mediation service. As you reposition Apollo beneath the window and nudge Mercury a few degrees to the left, she lights another bundle of rosemary and murmurs something about resetting the current. You cough. She presses a lump of beeswax into your palm. For the locks, she says, softens stubborn hinges. You thank her and slowly back away. Half blinded, you return to the hallway, breathing fresher air. Though fresh is relative in a building where mildew has opinions. Mainstream fact. In ancient Rome, personal household religion often blended with imported deities from across the empire: Greece, Egypt, Anatolia. A single household might worship multiple gods from vastly different origins, each with specific rituals, icons, and placement rules. One wrong figurine on the wrong shelf and, well, rearranging statues becomes a spiritual survival strategy. You make it back to your cot just in time to hear someone loudly reciting epic poetry. From above, it's the man in 3C. He started hosting informal salons again. That wouldn't be a problem, except he doesn't invite people. He just opens his shutters and shouts dramatic lines into the courtyard, hoping someone will applaud, or cry, or throw a fig. They usually throw figs. You let it go. You have bigger problems. Like the hallway that smells increasingly like fermented anchovy. You follow the stench, and there it is. A half-open door to the broom closet, and inside, a leaking amphora of garum. No, not again. You step closer. Carefully, garum is Roman fish sauce. Intensely potent, sticky, revered. Also, catastrophically smelly when spilled. You remember the last time this happened. The hallway didn't recover for weeks. One tenant claimed to see visions. Another moved out, claiming the spirits had become too bold. You find a rag, begin the mop-up, and that's when you notice something else. A small bowl, half full. Beside the spill, fresh. Someone's feeding the garum. You stare, look around. There's no note. Just a smear of something that looks vaguely ritualistic. You sigh. Historians still argue whether Roman tenants used garum as offerings, medicine, or punishment. Some recipes suggest it was used as an ingredient in almost everything. Others believe it had purifying properties. You believe it's mostly an occupational hazard. You lock the broom closet, double lock it, use Squealer, the key that always sticks, and whisper a quiet prayer to Felix, the plush goat deity, to keep things sealed. Back downstairs, your stylus is worn to a nub. You trade it out for your backup, slightly warped, smells faintly like onions. You update your wax log, shrine rearranged, Mercury appeased, Apollo sulking. Poetry from 3C ongoing. No casualties yet. Broom closet secured. Garum suspicious. And just as you put the stylus down, someone clears their throat behind you. It's the senator's nephew. Again. He's holding a chicken. You blink, then blink again. He smiles brightly. I've decided to offer tribute to your hallway deity. You stare at the bird. That's a real chicken. He nods, alive. He nods again. I don't take poultry bribes. He shrugs. Do you take figs? You point to the wall where your clay notes hang. What I take is peace and silence. Do you offer those? He considers, then hands you the chicken and walks off. You look at the chicken. It looks at you. You sigh. Back to the shrine apartment. Again. The chicken pecks your sandal. You stare at it. It stares back. You've handled broken locks, angry poets, gods at war, and sour bread vendettas. But this may be your limit. You carry the bird to apartment 2D, where the threshold between worlds lives among her scented statues and ritual dust. You don't knock. You just lift the chicken into view. She gasps. The omens were true. You say nothing. She takes the chicken with reverence, bows, and whispers, "We shall name her Victory." The door closes. You exhale. You descend the stairs with that quiet sense of dread. Only a Roman doorkeeper can understand that blend of exhaustion, mystery, and faint poultry smell that lingers in your tunic long after the animal's gone. The stairwell echoes with murmurs, not voices. No, whispers. Too many, too soft. You pause near the second floor landing and lean close to the wall. There it is again, low voices drifting through the bricks. Not from a room, not from the hallway. From inside the wall, you check the gap between bricks where the mortar's crumbling. There's a thin crack, not wide enough for a person, but enough for sound. You press your ear to it. Tell him again, a voice whispers, just barely audible. Tell him where the wine's hidden. You blink. This building has secrets. You've known that, but now you wonder, does it also have tunnels? Mainstream fact. Many ancient Roman buildings shared walls, courtyards, or even underground access to storage rooms or latrines. Some insulae were connected by crawl spaces and drainage channels intended for utility, but occasionally repurposed. You tap the wall once. Silence. You try the storage room beside the stairs. There's nothing except a stack of broken amphorae, a mummified broom, and a suspiciously loose floor tile. You leave it, not because you're afraid, because you're tired. You start down the hallway again and nearly trip over a pail of water. You know, it doesn't belong here. It's not leaking. It's placed on purpose, and beside it, scrawled in charcoal on the wall, no more footsteps. You pause, look up. The ceiling has a faint crack running across it. Not new, but wider than before. You look around, no witnesses. You whisper to yourself, I need a vacation. You mark the bucket in your wax log. Unexplained bucket. Passive-aggressive tone. Possibly structural message. You round the corner and hear voices again. This time, through the wall, beside 3A, you freeze. Last week, the tenant claimed she was haunted by conversational ghosts. You chalked it up to too much fermented turnip stew. But now you're not so sure. You press your ear close. Don't let him find it. Someone says, then silence. You take a step back, breathe. Consider your life choices, then move on. Because now it's time for the stairwell's daily secrets. You sweep as you go. Bits of straw, one sandal, a coin lodged in a crack that may or may not be cursed. You leave it. When you reach the third floor landing, you notice a new piece of graffiti etched with something sharp, probably a key. Don't trust the boy in 4B. He speaks to walls. You frown. That boy, he's the quiet one. The one who gave you a pomegranate last week. You liked him. You trace the words with your finger. The scratching feels recent. You flip your tablet. Scribble. 4B boy. Investigate. Kind eyes. Suspicious hobbies. The air grows still. Quiet. Too quiet. That's when you realize the building has gone silent. No shouting. No dripping. No coins rolling across the floor. Just the creak of the beams above and the soft tick of your keys as you shift your weight. You descend slowly, past the hallway shrine, past the empty stairwell, past the chicken still occasionally clucking in the distance. And then there it is again, a knock from the broom closet. You unlocked it this morning. You remember. You walk slowly toward the door, grip the handle, and pull inside. Empty. No garum, no bowls, no chalk marks. Just a faint smell of rosemary and something sweet. You step back, close the door, and then you see it. Someone has placed a tiny clay figure on your cot. Not a god, not a demon. It's you, a miniature figurine of a man holding keys. You pick it up, it's detailed, crude, but clearly made with care. The keys even clink. On the back, scratched faintly. For the watcher, you stare at the thing. A warmth rises in your chest. Not joy, not exactly recognition. Someone sees you. Maybe not clearly, maybe not kindly, but they see you. You place the figurine on your shelf beside the sandal fragment, the mildew tile, and the ever-watching goat deity. You sit, you rest your eyes, and just before you drift off, a voice whispers, faintly, he's listening, and then silence. The silence doesn't last long, because just when your eyelids begin their sacred descent thud, then again thud thud, you already know who it is. The senator, or more precisely, the senator's feet, drunk again, shoes mismatched. One sandal, one formal boot, no toga, just a tunic half tucked into itself like an angry napkin, and he's leaning off the side gate, swaying gently, muttering your name but getting it wrong every time. Porticus. That's not your name. Porterface. That's worse. You take a breath, roll your neck, grab Mercy, the key that always sticks, and open the gate before he tries to climb it again. The last time, he got stuck halfway and shouted for Bacchus to carry him home. The gate creaks open. He beams. There you are. Parcheesi. You don't correct him. He thrusts a handful of coins into your hand. They clink and immediately feel off. You hold them up. They're expired amphora coupons. You sigh. These expired 5 festivals ago. He gasps, genuinely hurt. But they have my face on them. They also have mold. He sways. I love this building, he says, petting the nearest wall. It understands me. Sir, that's a drain pipe. Don't mock my confidant. You guide him upstairs. Each step a small battle. His sandals squeak. His breath smells like cheap wine and even cheaper pride. At the second floor landing, he stops and points at a flickering oil lamp. You need to fix that. he mutters, as if he owns the moon. I did fix it. Do it again. It's flickering in judgment. You nod solemnly. I'll speak with it. By the time you reach his door, he's forgotten why he came home. He fumbles with a key that doesn't fit, drops it, then starts trying to unlock the door with the amphora coupons. You gently remove them. Use the real key. Push the door open. Inside, everything is where it shouldn't be. A plate of figs on the floor, a half-written speech nailed to a chair, a bust of Cicero wearing a cabbage as a hat. He nods proudly. Home. You guide him to the nearest cushion and leave before he tries to tip you in lentils again. Back downstairs, you add a note to your wax log. Senator returned. Conscious. Barely. Tipped in expired goods. May have insulted drain pipe. Mainstream fact. Roman senators weren't always the refined intellectuals of marble busts and solemn decrees. Many were flamboyant, frequently drunk, occasionally broke, and often deeply invested in bribing doorkeepers to look the other way. You flop onto your cot, keys still dangling from your belt like heavy metal laughter. Just as your spine begins to loosen, the floorboards creak. No footsteps, just pressure. You glance at the ceiling. Something or someone is walking barefoot across the beams again. You know that sound? It's the upstairs acrobat. Technically a tenant, real name unknown. He pays in coin and silence, moves at odd hours, carries nothing, makes no noise except for this slow, soft padding above your cot every few nights. You've tried following him. Once, you got as far as the roof before he disappeared behind a chimney and then reappeared behind you. You didn't ask questions after that. Tonight, you just listen. The beams creak, pause, creak again, then nothing. You check the hallway. Still, the only thing stirring is the pomegranate on your shelf, starting to sag. You eat a seed, just one. Bitter, possibly cursed, still better than fig wine. And then you hear a clatter. Back at the side door, you groan, stand, stretch. Your knees sound like broken maracas. When you reach the side gate, you find no one. Just a clay cup, balanced neatly on the doorstep. Inside, 2 coins and a note. You squint. Thank you for the silence. No name, no signature. Just that. You stare into the street. Empty. You pick up the cup. Feel the warmth of fingers still fading from the clay. Something about that note gives you chills. Not fear, not warmth. Just knowing. Historians still argue whether doorkeepers were bribed more for entry or for discretion. Inscriptions suggest both. One famously reads, "He saw too much and said too little. Paid well." You think about that a lot. You place the cup beside your miniature figurine, the one someone left for you, the watcher. It belongs there. The hallway groans gently as if agreeing. You lean against the cool wall, keys pressed against your hip, and look out the open slit of a window above the entry gate. The city beyond is quiet now, except for one distant scream, probably a wine merchant arguing with a donkey. You smile. Everything is normal. For now, it's barely dawn when your next title finds you. Spy. You wake not from sleep, but from the slight tap-tap of a stylus against your wall. You open one eye. The hallway is gray with pre-sunlight, the oil lamp casting a gentle pulse on the stones. And standing over you, holding a very official-looking scroll, is Cassius, your landlord. You know it's trouble because Cassius is smiling. And Cassius only smiles when he's about to hand you a task that smells of vinegar and civic guilt. Morning. Doorkeeper. He says too cheerily, "I have a favor to ask." You sit up slowly. If it involves fish sauce or another statue of Minerva, I decline in advance. He chuckles. No, nothing physical. Just keep an ear out. That's worse. He lowers his voice, leans closer. There are whispers, tenants breaking rules, storing contraband, maybe even speaking against the emperor. You raise an eyebrow. The boy in 2B once compared Caesar's haircut to a collapsed squirrel. That count? Cassius doesn't laugh. He hands you the scroll. It's blank. Start a new log. He says, mark anything unusual. Then he's gone. Footsteps light, guilt heavier. You unroll the scroll. The parchment smells of old ink and rotting ambition. You sigh and tuck it into your satchel beside your wax tablet. Congratulations, you're a spy now. Sorta, probably unpaid. Your first suspect arrives minutes later. It's 3C. Again, the poet. He's dragging a crate labeled salted grapes. You don't ask. You do. However, observe that it sloshes. Grapes shouldn't slosh. You write that down. Then, as he passes, you hear him mutter something about the revolution needing rhythm that goes on the scroll. 2. You go upstairs, knock gently on 4A, no answer. You peek under the door. Parchment scraps, a spilled bottle of ink, a drawing of a lion in what looks like military sandals? You add it to the list. Midday brings your favorite suspect. The man in one seat, he pretends to be deaf, which is convenient because it allows him to ignore all instructions, tax notices, and cries for help. Today, he's sitting outside his room, carving something into wood. You glance casually as you pass. It's a whistle shaped like an eagle. You pause. He glares at you. You move on. Scroll note. 1C possibly training birds for coded signals. Investigate. You head to the courtyard. Pretending to sweep, the cat watches you with suspicion, probably also a spy. Probably works for the senator. In the corner near the cistern, you find something curious. A pile of broken amphorae. Not odd in itself, except they're freshly broken, still damp, and none of the tenants claim them. You dig around. There, beneath the shards, a wax tablet. No name. Just a single phrase etched into the surface. He knows. You glance around, nothing but pigeons. You tuck the tablet into your pouch. Beside the scroll, note, someone is on to someone. Possibly me. Mainstream fact. Roman apartment buildings were hubs of gossip, black market trade, and quiet resistance. With little privacy and too many ears, tenants developed elaborate systems for sharing secrets-coded messages, symbols scratched into doorways, even using laundry patterns to indicate danger or safety. You remember the odd laundry last week. 3 tunics, 2 towels, and a bedsheet with a red stripe repeated twice in the same day. At the time, you thought it was someone being extra clean. Now, you're not so sure. The scroll grows heavier in your bag, even though it's mostly empty. By late afternoon, you get your first confession. Sort of. It comes from Tui. The tenant opens the door just a crack and whispers, "It wasn't me." You blink. What wasn't? She shakes her head. If anyone asks, I didn't bury the charm. You stare. What charm? The door closes. You mark the scroll. 2E denies charm burial. Unknown charm. Possible reverse confession. You return to your post just as the philosopher from upstairs leans over the railing and declares, "Truth is a hallway." You shout back, then explain the smell on the second floor. He retreats. Victory. You sit, keys in lap, scroll at your side, and then you hear it again, the whisper in the walls. You press your ear to the cool stone, just beside the lamp. The doorkeeper writes everything down. You freeze. You don't move. You don't breathe. And then laughter. Soft. Close. Inside the wall, you press your palm flat against the stone. Is it a prank? Is it a ghost? Or most worrying, is it someone who knows you're listening back? Historians still argue whether Roman apartments had secret communication networks, or whether people simply got very good at talking quietly through cracks. Some say there were hidden passageways. Others say the walls just got thin from all the secrets. You sit back. Slowly, you cross out half your scroll notes. Rewrite them with more care. You write, "Today, I listened. Tomorrow, I choose what I remember." Because being a spy isn't about truth. It's about which version gets told. And you're the doorkeeper. You hold the keys. You decide the story. You are halfway through drawing a crude map of who owes whom bread, when war breaks out in the hallway. Not real war. Laundry war. You hear it before you see it. The wet slap of cloth against cloth. Then the unmistakable shriek of an insult too old to still sting. Your mother starches tunics with vinegar. You sigh, slip the scroll back into your satchel, and jog toward the commotion. Keys jangling like angry wind chimes. At the center of it all, the delivery boy. You know him. Tall, wiry, 17 at most. Wears a tunic with the word vinegar stenciled badly across the back. Thinks the stairs are beneath him literally. He's standing on the second floor landing, holding a jug like it's a sacred artifact, and glaring down at the sisters from 2A. They expect me to carry this to 4B. He grumbles to no one in particular. What am I? A donkey. You said you would. One of the sisters snaps. I said I'd try. That's different. You arrive just in time to catch the jug as he tosses it at the floor in protest. You catch it. Barely. You exhale. Straighten up and stare at him with the look of a man who's had vinegar in his boots before and isn't above making that someone else's future. You do realize, you say calmly, that if this had broken, you'd owe half the building a new sense of smell. He shrugs. Not my fault these stairs were designed by lunatics. They weren't. You reply, they were designed by budget cuts. He tries to storm off, but you block the stairwell. You climb. You say, or what? You don't answer. You just pull out Mercy the stubbornest, rustiest, meanest key of the 12. You hold it up. Let it glint menacingly in the lamplight. I will lock you in the broom closet with last week's garum spill. I know the ratios. I have the rags. He stares, blinks, then starts climbing. Smart boy. The sisters, meanwhile, pretend not to have enjoyed the show. One of them quietly hands you a date cake. You accept it like a bribe. Because it is. Mainstream fact. Roman buildings had no elevators, obviously, and delivery boys were the invisible lifeblood of daily domestic life, hauling vinegar, olives, oil, bread, water jugs, scrolls, and sometimes scandalous letters. Their job was thankless, and most did not get along with doorkeepers. As you make your way back downstairs, you notice something else. A strange piece of cloth wedged under 3A's door. You knock, no answer. You knock again, still nothing. You glance both ways, then pull the cloth out carefully. It's a tunic, too small for 3A, and stained, with what looks like paint, ink. No wine, a whole spill of it. You write in your scroll, 3A may be hiding someone. Or something. Possible wine incident. Possible murder. Probably wine. Just as you tuck the cloth into your satchel, you hear a voice behind you. Looking for laundry. You jump. It's the poet from 3C, grinning, holding a cup of something that smells like regret. You keep a straight face, just inspecting suspicious textiles. Laundry doesn't lie, he says, sipping. Only the people wearing it. You nod as if that makes sense. He leans in. There's talk of a meeting tonight. In the courtyard. You squint. What kind of meeting? He raises one eyebrow. The quiet kind. You nod again. File that away. Later. At your cot. You sit with the date cake in your lap, the scroll at your side, and your 12 keys neatly arranged in front of you like the petals of a very tired iron flower. You take a bite of the cake. Too sweet. Too soft. Probably tampered with. But your standards died last week. You hear a rustling by the gate. You turn. The delivery boy is back, but not to complain. He's holding a broken amphora shard flat, round, cleaned. He's drawn a symbol on it, a spiral, encircled in lines. Not Roman, not Greek. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. Found it behind the cistern. Thought maybe it was yours. You take it. Turn it over. It is familiar. It matches the marking scratched into the clay figurine you were given. The one meant to look like you. You thank him. He shrugs again and disappears. You add a new line to your scroll. Symbol appears again, meaning unknown. Beginning to wonder if I'm being watched or worshipped. Historians still argue whether Roman doorkeepers were ever considered sacred figures. Some inscriptions hint that they were protectors of thresholds, not just physical, but spiritual guardians of space, order, and the invisible boundaries between lives. Others say they were just tired men with calloused feet. You stare at the shard, then at your keys, then at the hallway, and you wonder, if no one's looking at you, why do you feel so visible? You don't mean to step in the laundry, but fate and wet linen have other plans. It happens on the 3rd floor. You're investigating a complaint about dripping cloth when your sandal finds a soggy tunic stretched across the walkway like an ambush. You skid forward, flail, catch the railing with one arm, and hear a chorus of gasps from every open window. Then, from somewhere above, he slipped on my sheet, from the left. No, it was mine, the green one. And from the far end of the hallway, if he touched my husband's undertunic, I swear I'll file an omen. You straighten, dripping, and do what any Roman doorkeeper would do. You raise one hand and shout, "By the gods, your laundry has declared war." There is a pause. Then, 3 women emerge from their respective apartments, arms crossed, linen slung over their shoulders like battle standards. You've seen this before. You know the choreography. You call it the Great Wet Sheet War. The arguments come rapid fire. She hung it over my window. She twisted my clothespin. She's using 2 lines unfair. You hold up your stylus like a tiny sword. Enough. One more insult, and I bring in the vinegar bucket. Silence. Even the cat ducks behind a jug. You escort them one by one to rehang their laundry on separate lines. You invoke the ancient law of shared domesticity, which you just made up, and decree that no tunic may drip upon another without offering compensation in bread or silence. They grumble. One offers you a grape. You accept. It's sour. And just as peace begins to return, the rope holding 4 bees' laundry snaps. An entire bedspread, a large one, embroidered with dancing hairs, falls directly onto the head of the delivery boy, who has just returned with another jug of vinegar. He screams, trips, the jug shatters. You sigh, right in your wax log. Truce shattered. Vinegar deployed. Delivery boy compromised. You fetch a broom. As you sweep the puddle, you remember that time the acrobat tenant tied all the laundry lines into a pulley system that accidentally launched someone's undergarments into the neighboring building. That was a Tuesday. Mainstream fact. Roman tenement. Rooftops and balconies often served as makeshift laundries, with tenants stringing lines wherever possible. Arguments over space, drip zones, and linen theft were common. In fact, more than one riot in poor districts reportedly began with clothesline disputes. Wet laundry was political. You finally finish sweeping. The delivery boy, now thoroughly pickled, waves off your apology and swears revenge against all cloth. You believe him. You return to your cot. Sit. Keys jangle softly. Then tap, 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 tap. You look up. It's one beat. Tiberius, the whisperer. He holds out a sealed scroll. From the senator. He says, he said to give it to you directly, no one else. You take it. It smells like perfume, panic, and cheap ink. Inside, a single phrase. The wall speaks tonight. Listen carefully. You reread it. Then again, you glance at Tiberius. He shrugs. The senator told me. He'll know what it means. Do you? You don't. But you say yes anyway. You pocket the scroll. Add a quick note to your growing collection. Senator message. Cryptic. Possibly drunk. Possibly important. As night creeps in, you go about your final rounds. Lamps trimmed. Keys checked. Fig pits removed from the stairwell. You pass the shrine room. It's quiet tonight. The chicken is asleep, curled near a statue of Apollo, now wearing a laurel crown made of thread. You don't ask. You stop at the broom closet. Still locked. Still smells faintly of fermented ambition. You press your ear against the wall. Silence. Then a click. Not from the closet. From within the wall, a latch, a hinge. You freeze. Slide down to the floor. Wait. Then footsteps. Not in the hallway. Not on the floorboards. Inside the wall. Slow, measured. Whispering again. You can't make out the words this time. But you hear one thing clearly. A breath right on the other side of the bricks. And then scratching, like a stylus, writing something, in reverse. On your side of the wall, something begins to appear. A single word, written in ash, or ink, or something darker. Key, then gone. You touch the spot. Nothing remains. You look around. Nothing stirs. You return to your cot, slower than usual. Keys clutch tighter, as if they can unlock more than doors. Historians still argue whether Rome's insulae were merely housing or labyrinths. Between storage tunnels, disused sewage lines, forgotten basements, and walls rebuilt on older ruins, it's not unthinkable that some buildings held entire hidden lives. Yours, it seems, may be one of them. You lie down, close your eyes, and for the first time in weeks, you don't fall asleep thinking of leaking vinegar or passive-aggressive laundry. You think of whispers and keys. And who, if not you, holds the door inside the wall? Morning greets you with poetry. Not in the abstract sense. Literal poetry etched into the wall beside your cot in fresh charcoal, still smudging at the corners. You rub your eyes and lean closer. It reads, "The mildew creeps, the silence swells, but only he with keys can tell which doors are shut and which ones sleep. So listen close and do not speak." It's signed dramatically with a single letter, L. You stare at it, then check your wax log to see if anyone in the building has a name starting with L. Only Lucilla, from 1A, widow, wears too much perfume, pays rent early, harmless, except that she's the one who writes in verse. You remember her latest rent note, 2 coins I bring, 1 heart I leave, in hopes the hallway does not grieve. At the time, you chalked it up to excessive leisure. Now, you're not so sure. You write in your scroll, Lucilla suspected poet, also possibly prophet. Investigate. You find her outside her room, feeding raisins to a bird that might be a pigeon, or might be a lint sculpture. Hard to say. You clear your throat. Lovely morning, you say. She nods serenely. The sky was whispering earlier. About mildew. She doesn't blink. About doors. You wait, but that's it. You add, confirmed. Lucilla, unsettlingly on brand. Back in the hallway, you check the wall. The poem is already smeared. Gone. Except for the word sleep. Of course. You make your rounds. There are fresh notes pinned to the complaint shelf. 3C practicing flute at dawn. Sounds like dying geese. Oil lamp flickering again. Might be a sign. Someone hung laundry shaped like a man. Unnerving. You investigate the last one. It is unnerving. A tunic, 2 towels, and a clay mask hung on a string like an effigy. You poke it. It sways slightly, as if offended. Then you hear footsteps behind you. It's the man from 1C again. Still carving whistles. You ask, did you make this? He shrugs. It watches crows. Any success. They're mocking me. You believe him. Mainstream fact. Roman superstition often involved effigies, scarecrow-like hangings, and threshold charms to ward off spirits, thieves, or birds. Laundry, oddly enough, was sometimes used for such purposes, especially when no proper statues were available. You return to your cot, expecting peace. You get a poem, another one. On your wax tablet, someone has etched with shocking neatness, he walks the halls with jangling steel, but never asks the door how it feels. You don't even know how to respond to that. You eat a fig out of spite. That's when you hear it a knock. At the broom closet, again, you unlock it slowly. Use squealer. Inside, nothing, except a single strip of linen, pinned to the inside of the door. On it, hand-stitched in fine red thread, the 12th key does not turn doors. You stare at the strip. Your hand moves instinctively to your key ring. 12 keys. 11, you know, but the 12th, it's always been odd, shorter, heavier. No matching lock you have ever found. You've always kept it out of habit, like a button from an unknown coat. You hold it up now. The grooves are shallow. It smells faintly of iron and mint. You stare at the linen strip. The 12th key does not turn doors. Then, what does it open? You scribble in the scroll. 12th key may not be a key, or maybe it is for something else. You don't have time to ponder long, because the poet from 3C has set up a table in the stairwell and is performing again. This time, an ode to mold. You interrupt him mid-rhyme. You can't hold recitations on the stairs. He pouts, but it's a communal fungus. Then write it a letter and leave the stairs alone. He sulks back inside, muttering something about art being unappreciated by functional architecture. You sigh. Then a whisper floats down from 4B. You look up. The boy leans over the railing, a thin pomegranate in his hands. They're going to meet again, he says. Tonight, behind the wall, you blink. Who? He shrugs. The ones who don't live here, and disappears inside. You add to your log. 4B child possibly involved in wall meetings or hallucinating. Either way, critical witness. By the time sunset comes, your cot is no longer your own. It's covered in fragments. The poem, the stitched linen, the charcoal lines, the unread scroll, the 12th key resting on a folded towel like a sacred relic, and then someone drops a coin through the slit in the door. It clinks once, lands beside the figurine of you, the tiny clay version someone made. You pick up the coin. It's not Roman, at least not current Roman. The emperor's face is wrong. The year makes no sense. You flip it over, a spiral, same symbol as before. You exhale. The hallway's breathing differently tonight. So are you. You're halfway through rearranging the oil lamps again when someone yells, fire. You don't panic. You do what every doorkeeper does in a Roman insula. When someone yells fire, you drop the 12 keys onto your foot. Swear softly inwardly, because of the gods, and sprint. You're already up the first 2 flights before you smell it burnt oil, slightly sour, unmistakably dramatic. You reach the 3rd floor, where several tenants are clustered, looking upward with the helpless expression of people who'd like to help, but also don't want to sweat about it. It's coming from 4C, someone says. You climb faster, heart thudding. keys clinking, tunic sticking to your back. You reach the door to 4C and knock hard, no answer. You knock again. It is the doorkeeper. Open up, still nothing. You pull out Stumbler the key for 4C, chipped at the edge, but still willing and twist. The door gives way with a grunt and a puff of something unpleasant. Inside, chaos. No flames, no roaring fire, just thick smoke curling from a pan of blackened toast. And next to it, standing over the stove in total peace, is Livia. She looks up, blinks through the smoke. Oh, I thought I smelled breakfast. You stare at the pan. The toast has fused into charcoal. The room smells like betrayal. You yelled, fire. You say, no, I sneezed. She says, someone else probably panicked. You turn. Someone in the hallway is now arguing loudly that the smoke felt prophetic. You lean against the wall, keys thudding against your thigh, lungs filled with roasted breadcrumbs. Next time, you say, use a signal, like, I don't know words. Mainstream fact. Roman apartments were notorious fire hazards. Open flames, tight spaces, and flammable walls meant fires were frequent. Entire city blocks had been lost to toast before. It's said Emperor Augustus eventually had fire brigades stationed throughout the city. You understand why. Back in the hallway, the smoke is thinning, but the drama is not, because now everyone has an opinion about fire safety. Oil lamps should be banned. No, stairs should be banned. I think we should pray to Vulcan every morning. Why don't we just burn incense to keep the smoke familiar? You raise your hands. Enough. No more fire talk unless something is actually burning. A small hand goes up. It's the boy from 4B. Quiet, watchful. He points at your keys. They got scared. You blink. Who did? The keys. He points again. That one. He says, indicating the 12th. You stare at it. It doesn't look different, but it feels heavier now, a little warmer, like it's remembering something. You write in your scroll, 12th key reacts to fire panic. Possibly metaphorical, possibly witchcraft, possibly toast. You begin your descent back to your cot when someone stops you. It's the acrobat tenant. You rarely see him still, but now he stands at the bottom of the stairwell like a statue in motion, not quite smiling, not quite there. I saw something. He says, you wait. He lifts one hand, slowly, like showing you a secret. In his palm, a tiny piece of bark, etched with the same spiral symbol, dropped from the ceiling after the fire shout. He says, landed at my feet, thought it was yours. You take it. The mark is fresh, the lines sharp, not decorative, deliberate. You tuck it into your pouch next to the others. You ask, have you ever heard someone in the wall? He nods once. Heard. He taps his temple. Sometimes I see them. You don't ask what that means. You already feel like you're past the threshold of reasonable explanations. He disappears before you can respond, leaping up the stairs with the soundless grace of someone who lives at odd angles. You reach your cot and sit down slowly. 12 keys at your side. Scroll on your lap, figurine watching. That's when it happens. A knock, but this time not on the gate, not on the closet, on the wall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 12 times, evenly spaced, measured, like the ticking of some ancient architectural clock. You rise, touch the bricks. They feel warm. You press your ear to the stone. You hear breathing. Then whispered, tonight, the 12th key turns. And then silence, except your own breath. Fast, real. You sit and write in your scroll, slowly, clearly, in block letters. Prepare. Something is coming. You don't sleep that night. You pretend to. You lie on your cot, arms folded, keys laid out beside you like offerings. But your eyes don't close. They hover. Your breath hovers. Even the hallway seems to hover, caught in that fragile space between one moment and the next. Midnight comes, then slips past. You wait. Nothing. Then tap. Not a knock this time. A tap. 12 of them. You rise. You pick up the 12th key. It feels right, which is unsettling, because it's never felt like anything before. But now, it's as though it's awake. You don't know where to go, but your feet do. You walk past the broom closet, past the cistern, down the hallway where the lamp barely flickers and the walls lean just a little too close. You stop in front of the crack in the bricks, the same one that's whispered to you before. The one where sound passes, sometimes even breath. You raise the key, not to the crack, but to the wall itself. There's no keyhole, but still, your hand moves. Instinct. Memory you've never earned. You press the key against the stone and feel it click. The wall shudders. You jump back, heart in your throat, breath caught like a fish in a net. A seam appears, thin, vertical, barely wide enough for your shoulders. The wall splits open, not loudly, quietly, reverently. You glance behind you. The hallway is still, no witnesses, not even the cat. You step through. Inside it's dark, but not entirely. You can feel shapes in the air, the way your breath changes, the way your ears catch sound before your eyes catch light. A staircase, descending. You follow it, one step at a time. 12, to be precise. Of course, at the bottom, a room. Not big, not dramatic, just still. Inside, a table, a small one, clay, carved with spirals. On it, 12 objects, not keys, but things like them. A stylus, a tooth, a coin, a pomegranate seed, a feather, a broken lock, a stone with a hole, a ring of hair, a dried fig, a strip of parchment, a sliver of obsidian, and a miniature clay doorkeeper, just like the one left for you. Only this one is older, cracked, worn. You approach. There's writing carved into the wall behind the table. You step closer. Read it. For the watchers, for those who hold the stories, for those who do not sleep. You touch the clay figure. It crumbles. The rest stays solid. You pocket the pomegranate seed. Don't ask why. You just do. Mainstream fact. Many ancient Roman buildings were built atop older ruins. Temples became markets. Markets became homes. And sometimes, the foundations held not just bricks, but memories. Hidden chambers, shrine vaults, ritual crawl spaces. You're standing in one now, but it's not the room that frightens you. It's the realization you weren't the first, you aren't the only. You are part of a line, a long, quiet, watching line. The door behind you begins to close. You step back quickly into the hallway just before the seam vanishes again. You turn the key in your hand. It's cool now, just metal, sleeping. You return to your cot and find the clay figurine, the newer one. The one left for you is gone. In its place, a strip of cloth. You unfold it. Words stitched in red. The wall has chosen, guard it well. You sit, too tired to think, too alert to sleep. At some point, dawn begins to warm the bricks. You hear footsteps. The poet, muttering a sonnet about dust. The sisters, already bickering about towels. Lucilla, humming off key. Everything is normal, and absolutely nothing is. You pick up your stylus. Begin to write. Not in the wax log, not in the scroll, but on the back of the linen strip. Your first entry. A new story. One meant for the next watcher, whoever they might be. By noon, you're back to sweeping the hallway. It's easier, somehow. Not because the floor is cleaner, someone's dropped grape skins again, but because your mind is elsewhere. Somewhere deeper, somewhere under the bricks. The 12th key now sits apart from the others. You've tied a strip of red cloth around it. Not for identification, for respect. You're still the doorkeeper, but now, the doors you watch aren't all made of wood. They breathe. They remember. As you sweep, someone knocks on the gate. You open it with biter, same as always, and greet a traveling merchant hauling baskets of what he insists are miracle olives. You let him in cautiously. Olives don't need miracles, they need honesty. Back inside, the building groans softly, like it's adjusting its spine. Normal sounds, familiar creaks, but now you hear more than sound. You hear patterns. That knock on the 4th floor, 2 sharp, 1 soft. The sister signaling for help with laundry line sabotage. That cough behind this curtain on 3B. The poet rehearsing a new verse and pretending to be sick so he can listen in peace. That silence on the 2nd floor, too quiet. You investigate. There, in the space between 2B and 2C, you find a scroll tucked into the crack between door and frame. Unmarked. You unroll it carefully. Inside, a list. 12 names, none of them yours. But beside each name, a date, some from years ago, some from tomorrow. You scan the list. At the very bottom, written in fainter ink, Doorkeeper chosen. You don't write anything down. You just sit, lean back against the warm wall, and let your keys clink against your belt like a lullaby of metal and meaning. Mainstream fact. In Rome, there were secret societies, religious cults, and brotherhoods of mystery and silence. the Mithraic cults, the Vestal caretakers, even doorkeepers to sacred spaces all understood the power of liminality, of standing between. You finally understand what you are. Not just a doorkeeper, a threshold. That afternoon, Lucilla hands you a cup of honeyed wine and says nothing. She just nods, as though you've joined a club she's known about since the forum was new. That evening, the delivery boy returns quiet, respectful, with no vinegar in sight. He hands you a new amphora with no explanation. On the side, the spiral, etched with hutush. I assume he. Felmaten's confident hand. You take it without question. As darkness settles, you check the locks one by one. Gate, secure. Broom closet, still whispering slightly, but manageable. Hallway lamps, steady. Then, the final door, your wall. You touch it, not to open it, just to thank it. It hums beneath your fingers, then stills. You return to your cot. You lay the keys down in 2 rows, but the 12th key, you place that one beside your pillow. And for the first time in days, you sleep. Not because you're safe, but because you've accepted the weight of the watch. And as you drift off, you hear it, a voice. Yours, someone else's. It doesn't matter. It simply says, "We remember." And the hallway breathes with you. Word count. Why? Well, still maybe 8. Wind down 300 words. And now, as the final door clicks softly shut behind you, the hallway quiets, the footsteps fade, the oil lamps burn low, and the weight of 12 keys to laughter, to chaos, to secrets behind brick and breath settles gently into the curve of your hand. You've walked the full length of the building, listened to the walls, argued with sisters, intercepted vinegar, rearranged gods, swapped poetry for prophecy, and somewhere along the creaking floorboards, you stopped being just a man with a ring of keys. You became the memory of the building itself. So breathe in, slow and steady. Let the scent of clay and olive oil curl around your ribs. Let the whisper of linen on stair rails drift you down into sleep. Let the hush of a door closing in the distance feel like protection, not exclusion. Tonight, no keys need turning. Tonight, the building holds its breath with you. Outside, the city murmurs. But here, inside this old, exhausted, beautiful insula, the world narrows to soft candlelight and worn sandals and warm stone. And you, curled in the quiet, a doorkeeper no longer watching, but finally watched over. Sleep now. The hallway will keep your secrets. The walls remember your name. And the 12th key, it dreams. 2